brandlive.co.za.
Good morning. You're tuned into the Greenovation Show on Brand Live. We are coming to you live from 27 Boxes in Melville. Thanks for joining us. As our listeners will know, Greenovation is all about climate change. We talk solutions, we talk sustainable innovation and entrepreneurship. And this morning, we're talking nuclear. What is all the fuss about? And who's doing what about the nuclear debate in South Africa? I think energy security has long been an issue in South Africa. Our country committed a little over 5 years to renewable energy, but we believe that's been put on hold by Eskom and the powers that be. We have in studio with us this morning Dominique Doyle, who is a project coordinator for EarthLife Africa based in Johannesburg. And we are also joined by Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project. Dominique, welcome.
Thanks. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. So Dominique, let's kick off the conversation. I believe you have a march happening on Friday. Tell us about it.
We do. We'll be marching from the Westgate taxi rank in Johannesburg to the Constitutional Court in Braamfontein. And basically, EarthLife Africa throws a climate march every single year as a part of the Global Day of Action. But this year, because we have a court date now set for the 13th and 14th of December, for what we say is an illegal and unconstitutional procurement of nuclear power, this year, the theme of our march is Keep Nukes Out of COP and Keep Nukes Out of South Africa. We believe that nuclear energy is a false solution to climate change. Some very corrupt, huge industries, the nuclear industry portrays nuclear power as being the answer because it's greenhouse gas emissions free. But that's absolutely not the case. Nuclear power is the most expensive type of energy and the most dangerous type of energy. And what South Africa is looking at is a 1.8 trillion rand deal with a dodgy foreign power, that being Russia. And it's going to lock South Africa into centuries of debt and extremely high electricity prices, which the people of South Africa already cannot afford.
Wow, that's quite loaded. I think there were quite a few things I want to touch on. But I think the first thing is, and I think I've had this conversation with Kumi Naidoo in the past where he was saying it's unconstitutional. Can you explain to our listeners why this particular deal is deemed as unconstitutional?
Well, basically, when we do any kind of energy planning and any kind of energy procurement, the first thing that should be in place is an integrated resource plan for electricity. And that needs to be updated every 2 years, which is stipulated in the Electricity Act of 2006. The last update we saw was the IRP 2013, which said that nuclear power is unaffordable and not necessary for the country. But because that didn't meet the expectations of those within government who are pushing through the nuclear deal, the IRP was subsequently shelved, and to date we still have not seen a new IRP. Furthermore, the National Development Plan of South Africa says no to nuclear. The Planning Commission says no to nuclear. I think what we are looking at is a crisis within government where factions of the leading party just cannot agree with each other. And nuclear is just really not the answer for South Africa. It's the worst possible way we can go right now.
I hear you and I totally agree. But can you explain to our listeners, it's crazy how many of these nuclear, what shall we call them, advocates, tout nuclear as the cleanest possible source of energy. What is the truth?
Well, the truth is that South Africa has one nuclear power station, Koeberg, and that was commissioned in 1982. And we still have no answer what to do with that high-level waste. It's lying in cooling pools in the Koeberg power station, and simply it's just too dangerous to transport, and we don't know what to do with it. So not only does nuclear create such highly toxic radioactive waste, but the whole nuclear cycle from mining uranium to processing uranium is incredibly dangerous for workers and for people exposed to the radiation that is emitted. Johannesburg is one of the most polluted cities in the world. In fact, it's probably the most polluted city in the world, and it has the highest levels of radiation. And let's not lie about the fact that South Africa and Johannesburg has an extremely low low mortality rate. People, the average death age is 45, and that's not normal. and that we have extremely high levels of cancer, and we have to consider the environmental consequences of that. So nuclear is an extremely, extremely dangerous energy force, and besides that, it's extremely expensive. And why, when the developed world and those with the experience of nuclear are turning away from it because of all its obvious downsides, why is South Africa and many other developing countries trying to pick it up? I think it's more a question of geopolitics than it is about energy creation.
Thanks, Dominique. This morning we have Dominique Doyle from EarthLife Africa, and after this very short break, we'll be joined by Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project as we talk the nuclear debate this morning.
27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat.
Noel? Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us on our nuclear discussion this morning. Noel is joining us from the African Climate Reality Project, and we've just had Dominique talking about the fact that nuclear is an unconstitutional deal. It's not the safest option for South Africa, and it certainly isn't the cheapest or the most affordable option. Noel, would you like to come in on the conversation? What is African Climate Reality Project's stance on this nuclear deal, which is looming for South Africa?
Our stance is very much in line with EarthLife and other civil society organizations who are fighting this deal. I think Dominique probably exposed some of the issues with regards to the cost and environmental impact. There are other hidden issues with nuclear. If you just look at, for example, the water use, the water consumption to produce nuclear energy, you will see that it's tremendous, and a country like South Africa can't afford to have a large nuclear energy dependency. Just to give you an example, we roughly calculated that to produce 1 megawatt hour of electricity, that's about the electricity you need for 650 houses, you would need 190,000 liters of water for nuclear energy. In comparison, wind energy only uses 1 liter of water. So you see that this is also an issue that should be brought to the discussion, because South Africa is a very water scarce country. Now, the trick in terms of what African Climate Reality stands for, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, is that nuclear is still considered a clean energy. Many people would argue that it doesn't produce carbon as much as coal or other fossil fuels, and that is also something that we want to argue against, because this is neglecting the carbon emissions generating through the extraction of uranium. So there's also a big issue on that aspect.
Now, well, I'm glad you brought up the issue of water, and it's something which we talk about often in green innovation circles, and certainly with policymakers. We know that coal-generated electricity uses around 10,000 litres of water per second, which is insane. When we presented, in fact, we worked very closely with the South African Wind Energy Association in 2010, and we had basically made our position clear to government in terms of the IRP 2010. And we had done, the studies were based on 10 years of data which was collected, and it showed that we could save 84 billion litres of water per annum if we were to commit to 25% renewables, just 25%, even if it was just wind, 25% wind by 2025. And I think the water issue is something which is so far removed from the energy debates, particularly in community circles particularly those communities who are most affected by water shortages. Besides the water shortages, not every South African household or family already has access to water. Dominique?
Well, the planned site for the nuclear power station is Tastepoint in the Eastern Cape, so it'll be using seawater. But obviously that'll have to be desalinated, and that'll also have huge energy implications. But where Tastepoint is extremely controversial in terms of water. Already, communities there cannot drink their tap water because the wastewater treatment plants have broken down, and they have to buy their water. And what we've seen in other communities where these huge infrastructure projects are happening, like in Lephalale with Medupi, is that these municipalities simply cannot cope with the large influx of people and migration towards jobs in the area, and so there will inevitably be water crisis. The coal debates in water, I mean, that's a big one. My personal belief is that Medupi power station will never fully come to full capacity because there is simply no water to support that huge, giant coal-fired power station. At the moment, we're closely watching the plans for the pipeline, which will take surplus water from Gauteng all the way up to Lephalale. But at the moment, with the climate and the weather so erratic, there's drought 1 minute, floods 1 minute, we simply don't have any idea of what our water levels will be like in the future. So we can't plan these big, massive infrastructure projects at this point in time when we have no idea what's happening with our water.
But tell me a bit more about that. We have communities already paying for water at the site where this nuclear plant is being planned?
Well, they have to buy their drinking water because the municipality is so dysfunctional. And when EarthLife goes to these municipalities and tries to lobby against the nuclear deal, we're just told by the municipalities, we'll fix those problems. Those problems are nothing. We need this huge project to create jobs for the development of our communities. And there's a massive argument there as well, is that what kind of jobs are we looking for? Obviously we need jobs, obviously we need development, obviously we need economic growth, but this is not the right way, and there are better solutions.
Great. Noel, your thoughts on the water debate, the water energy debates?
I think we covered most of the issues. There was another, I'm going back to what we also are concerned about with regards to the nuclear energy as a climate reality. I don't know if Dominique touched on that, but there is the issue of the cost. Recently, the CSIR released some new figures on how much each type of energy would cost. And they show that nuclear energy would be at 1 rand 17 per kilowatt hour, as opposed to renewable energy, which stands already at 0.62 kilowatt hours. So we see there's a huge gap. And if you just look at the cost efficiency, you would not understand why South Africa is heading towards nuclear energy, which might get even more expensive in the future because this costing doesn't include things like rehabilitation or accidents or things like that. So, and it doesn't include also the cost of taking care of the CO2 emissions that are generated in the process. So you see, I mean, this is all one big pack of issues that comes with the nuclear energy, and we really need to make a clear case against it.
Yeah, Dominique, I want to come back to the point about socioeconomic development and the need for sustainable development. The Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Procurement Program, it's a long word, REAP as we call it, has actually, it's the first of its kind in the country, where a procurement program required that those developers allocate a portion of their money back into those communities towards socioeconomic development, enterprise development. I don't believe that there's a chance that coal would do the same or that nuclear would. And there's been, at least I think since 2011, in the first 3 rounds of this procurement program, it was around 194 billion rand raised in direct investment into the country. You are clearly saying or suggesting to government that we should stick with renewables and follow through with our renewable procurement plan. Do you believe that this process and this program, which dictates you have to reinvest funding towards SED and ED, do you believe that it is benefiting communities, that it could be expanded or scaled on?
I think the Renewable Energy Procurement Program has done a fantastic job. I think if we look back over the past 20 years about what South Africa has achieved, massive amounts of social spending and huge improvements in people's lives, and we can attribute that to the leading party. And the Renewable Energy Program is one of the best things that has happened in South Africa over the past 20 years. But I do believe there's problems there. Unfortunately, I'm not looking as much into it as I should be. I do have knowledge that the community trusts aren't functioning as well as they could be. And I do think that's because there's a certain part of the energy system that wants renewable energy to fail. So it could be much better managed than it is, and it has huge potential to do more. The coal IPP program is also promising the same things, but that's something that EarthLife is challenging fiercely. We're challenging each new coal IPP one by one. And the nuclear energy program is promising a whole range of things to a range of businesses. It's promising a whole localization of a nuclear industry. It's promising refabrication of fuel in South Africa. We're looking at the uranium mining, new uranium mines opening up. We're looking at a possible restart of Vilandaba. So a lot of promises are being made through this nuclear deal that aren't in reality going to happen. And a lot of people are already making a lot of money out of it. If you look at the intergovernmental framework agreement signed with Russia, you can see that Russia has total control over which countries and which vendor countries South Africa has the right to do business with. So while all these promises are being made to local entrepreneurs on the ground in South Africa, they won't be met because of our international commitments towards Russia, which have already been signed. And part of our court case argues that South Africa has already entered into a binding deal with Russia. And what that means for South Africa on the international playing field, we don't know yet. That's exactly what we're trying to stop locally. How can we stop South Africa and the South African people from entering into this dodgy Russian deal?
So it really is. I mean, the debate has been raging for years about nuclear really being about geopolitical influence. And I hear you saying that this deal that we've already signed, or this commitment that we've signed with Russia, already dictates to us who we work with, how we engage. Can you talk a bit more about that? I think people are so unaware of what that means for South Africans, what it means for our local economy.
Well, there were 5 deals signed, and EarthLife tried for a very long time to get a hold of these deals. Eventually, we were leaked the Russian deal from a Russian colleague, and so we knew it was in the Russian deal before we saw any of the other deals. And it was very specific. It was technology specific, it was site specific, and it said things like, if in case of a nuclear accident, South Africa has to carry all of the liability. It says that Rosatom will supply all of the technology, and you have to have permission to deal with any other nuclear vendor. And that means that Rosatom and Russia basically have the right to continue doing business with South Africa forever. I mean, how long does a nuclear power station last? You can't switch them off, right? That's more expensive to switch them off than to start them. So we've basically locked ourselves into a never-ending business deal and a one contract, one client business deal with Russia. And then when we saw the other deals, we saw that something was highly, highly suspicious. The deal that was apparently signed with the United States dates to 1995 and was signed by F.W. de Klerk. The Korean deal was signed in 2011, and then there was a Chinese deal and a deal with France. And none of these deals had any of the details that the Russian deal had, which has led us to believe that, according to international law, because this deal was passed through Parliament under a clause that requires no parliamentary ratification, the deal has already gone through, and we are in business with Putin, which is scary.
That's shocking. Dominique,
because if there's two people that you don't want to see in business together, it's President Jacob Zuma and Vladimir Putin.
We're going to take a short break. We have with us in studio, we have Dominique Doyle from EarthLife Africa. Very interesting, very controversial debate and discussion we're having around the nuclear deal. And joining us via Skype, we have Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project. Stay tuned. We're talking more about the nuclear deal.
If you're looking for an information technology and communication solution company suitable for your small or medium-sized enterprise, then look no further than Hive ICT. They aim to provide SMEs with the same level of service expected by large corporations without sacrificing the personal relationship they have with their customers. Offering remote and on-site support, as well as IT system design, network design and installations, server and workstation maintenance, and web design, web application development, and more. Visit www.hiveict.com right away. Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Right, you're back with the Greenovation Show, where we talk all things climate change, sustainability, sustainable innovation. And this morning, we're talking the nuclear debate. With us in studio, we have Dominique Doyle, who's a project coordinator for EarthLife Africa. And joining us via Skype, we have Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Projects. So, Dominique, what you were saying to me is quite frightening in terms of South Africa being locked into a deal, effectively with Putin, dictating to us who we do business with, how we engage, what our liabilities are in terms of any incidents or any risk factors. I'd like to bring Noel back into the discussion and hear what ACRP is doing in terms of community engagement. Have you been engaging the community? What have you found their response to be to in terms of going ahead with a nuclear deal versus renewables? Noel?
Well, I would say that from the feedback we got from climate leaders and other stakeholders is that there's very little information out there, and especially at grassroots level. And this is partially because of what Dominic said. This has all been done very secretly. So people are not informed. They don't know what the government is headed into. And that's maybe one of the most concerning things is in terms of public participation. There's none. So we haven't been very, very effective, I think, in terms of raising awareness and getting the debate out there. And that's something we need to be focusing on now while we are challenging the decision in court. While EarthLife and SFSA are doing that. It's a difficult discussion to have because nuclear seems very remote for most people. I think one way to go about it is to have a rather positive discourse and try to promote alternatives. And we have solid arguments for it. I mean, I mentioned the costing arguments that are coming out strongly and are being confirmed from different sources. So we can use that. Another argument that I think will be impacting at community level and grassroots level is the fact that renewable energy are more flexible, and so they are better adapted to address the electricity needs of a number of areas and people who are not receiving electricity at the moment or not properly. So this is a discussion we need to frame in a way that it responds to the concerns of the people and not just to frame it in terms of highly technical facts. But we need to be much more active on that and to work together with other organizations. It can't be the job of just one structure, one organization.
I agree, Noel. And that's what I've found is that, since the launch and this fad or trend of sustainability reporting, corporates are quite committed to throwing money at all sorts of, in inverted commas, sustainability projects and sustainability initiatives. But once you go to a corporate and say, listen, here's a big issue at hand which affects every single citizen, and you say, look, can we come together as a collective, as corporate South Africa, to fund a program which educates people at community level so that they understand what the energy debate is. For me, it's always been the food, water, energy debate. There is that nexus that exists, and people don't get it because they don't understand it. And the only way to change that is to educate people. I probably would get into trouble for saying it, but we are almost back in a pre-apartheid regime where you withhold information so that people don't really know what's happening around them, so they can't make informed decisions. And for me, it's quite troubling and it's quite disturbing, because our decisions in terms of energy will ultimately affect, it already is affecting our water and our food security in South Africa, where we have huge levels of inequality and poverty, and all of that is it exacerbates the crime situation in the country. I'm just saying we're facing serious social challenges in the country. Dominique, I'd like to hear from you. What have you found in engaging communities? How do you go about it, and what has the community response been to date when you are informing them about the truths?
Well, EarthLife, we have our traditional community constituencies, and if you can introduce us to more communities, we'll be there. We'll talk to the guys, we'll explain the situation and how the nuclear deal will impact on their lives tomorrow. So yes, we have to spread the word in the community level, but this misunderstanding of the nuclear deal doesn't only exist at the community level. It exists within business, it exists with politicians, it exists in churches, it exists at high-level society levels. I was just at a meeting the other day that was called as an emergency meeting. We have to get the top guys in civil society to the table and explain to them why the nuclear deal is bad and what some people are doing about it. And I was just like, come on, guys, this is the biggest problem facing South Africa today. This is going to be a deal 10 times more expensive than the arms deal. And yeah, so I mean, we have to give communities more credit because they understand the issues of their food, water nexus, energy nexus more than anybody else. I think it's the top users, business, the middle class,
the unaffected almost.
They don't even know where their water and electricity comes from. It just appears magically from the sky. And so everybody needs to be engaged on this.
And I think also when you've got someone, and again, it's someone who was, maybe until recently, quite highly respected as a business person, when you have someone like Donald Trump saying climate change is a hoax created by the Chinese, it makes you wonder about the level of education of some of our country's business and political leaders. I agree that our middle class possibly needs a lot more education, community involvement. But how do we go about doing that? Is it possible? I'm just saying, is it doable with the kind of small budgets that we know most NGOs and NPOs work with? How are we going to change it? I've said it often. I'd like to have the budget of Coca-Cola, the marketing budget, because there's no corner, there's no nook or cranny in the entire world that they cannot reach with their products. I'd like that kind of budget, but how are we going to do this?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a team at EarthLife of about 7 people, community mobilizers, accountants, me, and we are up against a massive, massive PR machine, and that is Rosatom, and that is money being piled in there. They're paying journalists, they're paying top university professionals, academics to push the nuclear agenda. And it's just me and a team of 5 and SAFC and a few other organizations like Food and Trees that are coming to the table now trying to fight this. And yeah, we're tired. We just have to keep on going, and people are eventually catching on. I mean, people are starting to have their eyes opened. We are heading on a train to nowhere, and we have 1 month to stop it. Come on, South Africa. Come on, join us.
I feel that passion. I agree. I think what I'd like to talk about next is you've got 2 possible court dates in December. Tell me about that court action that is being lodged. Who is it being launched at, and who's presenting the charges?
Well, it'll be our attorneys, Adrian Paul attorneys and counsel, Max Dupree, and we are seeking relief from President Jacob Zuma, number 1, and Minister of Energy. And then we also have charges against NERSA and the National Province of Council.
Council of Provinces,
yeah,
NCOP, yeah.
And basically we are seeking that the nuclear deal is immediately put on hold until proper constitutional practices have taken place and until the government has determined the procurement process for procuring nuclear power, because currently we are buying 8 reactors at an extremely expensive price with no system of doing so. And we've seen government falling over itself over the past year trying to push this deal through. I mean, look at Pravin Gordhan, Nene, and David van Rooyen and his 2-day special.
His weekend special.
His weekend special, yeah. So basically we're trying to crack that whole thing open. And the state capture report, that gave us some indication of what's really been going on. Also in terms of coal, which was very interesting. So EarthLife has also been running a campaign this year called Coal Corruption, and I think that state capture report totally proved what we've been saying all along.
Noel, do you agree that this court action is necessary? Should we get more people behind this court action?
We think it's very necessary. You need to challenge this thing at all levels, and like Dominique said, it's there's not been a proper process in going about it, so it needs to be challenged in course, also to set a precedent. And I think this year we've seen quite a few court decisions being made that send a signal that sometimes people can't just go about doing what they want, and there's a reality check. But we need to push for it, and EarthLife and SAFSE need to be supported by as many civil society organizations, but also citizens and also faith-based groups. It doesn't have to be just a monolithic thing. So to show that we are a critical mass, asking for accounts and asking for clarity on this matter. I just also want to quickly mention that we're gonna have on the 5th and 6th of December, there's going to be a show called 24 Hours of Reality. It's an online broadcast about climate reality, and we are going to launch a call for action against the nuclear deal, so in support of what EarthLife is already doing in their campaign. So I think there are many actions that can be taken at many levels, but the court action will be decisive and should be really relayed in the media and in all our networks and all our constituencies. I think the media has a big role to play there.
Yeah.
And it's maybe we said we are too few to tackle this big problem, but if the media is involved and supportive, we can reach out to the middle class and companies and the corporate sector. So it's a critical role for the media to take on, and I have the feeling they've been very silent at the moment. I don't know why. Is it because they have not enough information, or because it's a very sensitive issue, they don't want to get stuck in it? I don't have the answer to that question, but I think there's a missing link here that we need to tackle that problem of media involvement on those issues.
I agree. I think, Noel, to your point, media don't get involved, and I'm very happy that SAFSE and EarthLife are working together with African climate reality projects. But I think the bigger issue is that climate change is seen as an environmental issue, which it is not. It is a justice issue. It is a social justice issue. And I think if we were to present the climate change debate or the nuclear debate or the energy debate as a justice issue rather than an environmental issue, we would probably see a lot more NGOs and NPOs working together. But again, it's the issue of people not understanding. I don't get why a lead SA has not been leading this issue in the public domain. This is surely one of the biggest ways in which this big media group could be leading the country into this change. Do you agree, Dominique?
Yeah, it's been very difficult to get lead SA, that's prime media, right?
Yeah.
To talk about nuclear for many years now. There are certain journalists that have picked up the issue over the years. One being, I can't remember his name. He leaked the Intergovernmental Framework Agreement to the Mail and Guardian for us, and subsequently his work visa was denied, although he's worked in South Africa for many, many years. And there have been, a number of other journalists, but it's not something that you see every day on the TV. Either it's because it's a long case, it's been spanning many years, or maybe it just doesn't have the excitement of the Nkandla or something. But
excitement, yeah, I like that.
I mean, the nuclear deal is going to be about 654 Nkandlas. So what's more important, really? Nkandla was just a drop in the ocean compared to what we're headed for now. Yeah, but I think the journalists will start to pick it up. I don't know. I hope so.
I certainly do. And believe me, it is a challenge working in mainstream media. And I think just as my own introduction to Greenovation and the publication and this channel is that because I'd worked in the climate change space for a number of years, you struggle to get airtime on TV or on radio, and you get maybe 2 or 3 column centimeters in a newspaper, and the publication is so small, the article is so small, it's lost all of its meat or any of its substance. So I created these platforms, created these channels. It might be a drop in the ocean, but we've all got to lean on each other and do what we can.
I think there's good journalists out there. I think maybe the editors don't think it's enough.
It's got to go via the news editor or sub-editor who decides how big the article is, or whether it's a big story on radio or not.
And unfortunately, these days we're sensational.
Yeah, we've bought into the whole hype of sensationalist journalism, if you can call it that. But I wanted to touch on quickly your Nuclear Free Future Awards. What is that?
That is an annual event held by an organization, a German organization. They have it every year in a different country, and basically they just recognize the good work of anti-nuclear activists around the world. So this year Johannesburg is hosting it.
Wow.
And we're hosting it in the Vaal. We're having a welcome dinner tonight, and tomorrow will be the ceremony. And on Friday we will march together with the laureates and with the Nuclear Free Future Award people. And we have this year laureates coming from Turkey, from America, from Ethiopia, and they're all given categories in terms of education, resistance, and solutions. And also this year, getting a special award is a man called Alfred Sepepe, and he's been fighting for many, many years for the rights of Philandaba workers who are not properly educated on the impacts of radiation. There used to be about 60 of them doing a class action. Unfortunately, they've all passed away from unknown cancers. And Alfred Sepepe is one of the last remaining and still trying to get compensation for what he experienced at Philandaba during the apartheid years.
Wow, that's incredible. And so tell me, in terms of how do they find these candidates, or how do they find these people that are awarded? Is it a global watchdog?
I think it's just nominations from other people, and then it goes toward their own council or committee, and from there they choose.
Great. I think we'll go to a break. We're still talking the nuclear debate with Dominique Doyle from EarthLife Africa, and joining us via Skype is Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project.
Making statement yet blending into the surrounding suburbs of Melville, 27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat.
And you're back with the Greenovation Show, where we talk all things climate change, climate solutions, sustainable innovation and entrepreneurship. But for this morning, we're talking nuclear. In studio, we have Dominique Doyle from EarthLife Africa. And joining us via Skype, we have Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project. So we've been talking about the cost of the deal, the nuclear deal, why it doesn't make sense in terms of the country's food, water, energy nexus, socioeconomic conditions in the country. We've been talking about community engagement. But for now, Noel, if you can tell us, what kind of person gets involved at African Climate Reality Project? What got you involved in the whole climate change, climate solution movement?
Well, I think, as far as I am concerned, it comes from a long time concern with where we're heading with the environment and the climate, and how we address climate issues in the policies and measures that are being made nowadays. And I think the nuclear issue, and more largely the question of energy production, is typical of climate change problems that we need to address now, and we need to be creative in our thinking. And well, I consider myself to be still young, and I think it's up to young people to take that challenge. because we know that those who contributed to create the problem won't be part of the solution. And that brings me to answer your question about who is in the movement. In terms of climate reality, what we call the climate reality leaders are people who've been trained to raise awareness on the climate change issues, and also to mobilize communities or different constituency into action. So those are people from very different walks of life and representing different industries and sectors and even different concerns. Some of them are concerned about the energy production issues. Some others are more involved with building energy efficiency and looking at buildings and transport. Some of them are more involved in the agricultural sector. So it's a very diverse crowd, but they all have in common that they're concerned about the future of our country and of the continent. In terms of ethnicity, I would say it's pretty open. But what I notice, and maybe I'm wrong, but from my perspective, I see the green movement still being a very urban and peri-urban movement. Although there are interesting initiatives happening in the countryside and in farming and agricultural areas in terms of sustainable agriculture. But I think the rural world is still underrepresented in when you talk of environment and the green movement. And that can be for many reasons. It can be access to information, it can be the distance from the city centers, which are seen as the places where decisions are made in terms of addressing climate issues. It can be also a question of visibility. There are many things happening in the rural sector, but they don't get as much visibility and publicity as what happens in urban centers. So I think that needs to be addressed in terms of the movement. We need to be a much more broadly embracing and grassroots movement than we are now. There's been a lot of progress, but it can be going even further. And I also think we already have some representatives from corporate, but we need to emphasize that as well, because a lot of the change will come from companies and the way they do their business and also where they invest. So that's more or less the landscape. Just a final note, I think also the movement is getting more and more embraced by the youth, because obviously they see climate change as being the big issue for the future. And they also have a bit of a disruptive tendency. You don't want to do the way your parents did things, so you just want to create a new way, and you have the energy and you're not corrupted by.
Great. Dominique, so I've got two final questions for you. What got you involved in EarthLife? Where did you come from? What were your aspirations growing up as a child? Is this what you always believed you were going to do? And then the second question is, to Noelle's point, is the climate change movement growing? Is it evolving? Are we seeing different peoples, different types of people? Is it more female-driven? Is it male-driven? What are we seeing? So those are my two final questions.
Okay, when I was a kid, I had two options. I was going to be a fashion designer or a game ranger. So I tried both. And I ended up writing environmental policies for government, and wasn't really happy there because it was all just lip service and there was no implementation. So I found my way to EarthLife, and I think I just work here because I enjoy fighting with people. That's what we do at EarthLife best. And I think the movement is woman-driven, definitely woman-driven. Women are the carriers of the burdens of electricity and energy costs and providing water and food for households. So I still feel that the strongest constituency is coming from women. I think the youth have a huge role to play, but I feel that they're not stepping up at the moment. They can do much more. They've got a huge amount of energy, like Noelle was saying, and they need to start linking their struggles to the environmental struggle. The Fees Must Fall movement, 1 trillion rand worth of nuclear deal could solve the education crisis in South Africa. And I feel that the youth are too focused on their own very important problems, but they need to link that to why their problems exist. Why is there no money for education? It's because of other things happening in the world. So a lot more environmental education has to be done with the youth.
Great. So I just want to close with one or two thoughts. So I think about a month ago I had the good fortune of attending a round table. It was a young feminists on climate change round table. And we had the good fortune of having Tasneem Essop, who was formerly with World Wildlife Fund for Nature South Africa. And she posed a very powerful, very challenging thought to this very small group of young women leaders, that apartheid has nothing on climate change, especially for women, that this climate change is the struggle of our times. We will never see anything like it. We will never need to overcome the challenges that are already there, that will only be worsened over the next few years. And she was saying that women, wherever there's inequality, women suffer more than men. They are most vulnerable. Young or old, women are most vulnerable. So my challenge to our listeners, if you're out there as a young woman, find out what you can do in your community. Find out how you can mobilize, even in small groups. And I think the power of a woman's very natural or inherent communication skills, there's power in that, because we share information, we share stories, we share insights. And how funny that it's you, Dominique, Noelle, and myself as three women discussing climate change.
Hey,
Yeah.
the environmental movement is made majority of women, and that's the truth.
And I think
women are the most powerful activists.
Absolutely. And I think we need to rally around the next generation, because what I'd found in that little room, there was one young girl, I think she's 19 years old, from Limpopo. So she does educational or environmental education in her community. She goes from school to school. She goes from high school, primary school. That's what she does. And you could never have imagined that this young girl from a rural community would see this as her life's calling. But she was saying, this is my purpose. And that was so profound for me. And if that is what the future of the country looks like, then it's bright. We just need more. Noelle, I want to thank you again for joining us via Skype. It was awesome having you to join us today. Dominique as well, it was amazing. But Noelle, can you tell us again about your event happening on the 6th of December and tell people where they can connect?
All right. So it is an online live broadcast. It's called 24 Hours of Reality. It's organized by the Climate Reality Movement, and it will be showcasing both climate change issues and solutions around the world, specifically in 24 countries, and South Africa would be one of those showcases countries. So you can just tune in on the website. You just go to 24hoursofreality.org. I just need to check, but I think that's correct. And you'll be able to stream online. And so it will start on the 5th of December, and it will run for 24 hours onwards. I think the South African part of the program will take place on December 6th at 6 p.m. So don't hesitate to tune in. You can find all this information as well on the African Climate Reality website. And yeah, it's going to be a great broadcast with lots of information and lots of positive information, I would say, not just the doom and gloom that we sometimes get tired of. So I encourage you to tune in.
Awesome. Thanks, Noelle. Dominique, any parting thoughts? Awesome. Thanks, Noelle. Dominique, any parting thoughts?
Please come join the march on Friday, and there'll be several actions leading up to the court case.
Where do you start the march? Where does the march start?
Westgate Taxi Rank.
At?
And I think it's on Lillian Goy Street.
And the time that people meet?
At 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
And ends at Constitutional Court in Braamfontein. And then keep an eye out on our Facebook page and Twitter as we head towards the court date. There are actions happening all over the country, from Durban to the Beaufort West to Cape Town. I think at the end of the month in Cape Town we'll be having an action outside Parliament in which we call for a public hearing on the nuclear deal, because the citizens have the right to choose.
Awesome. Thanks. You've heard it loud and clear from 3 women leading the climate change discussion and the anti-nuclear debate. We don't want nuclear in South Africa. It's unconstitutional. We cannot afford it. It has devastating impact on the environment, and we encourage every citizen to use their voice. And I say it often, we have 53 million voices. I'm using mine, yours. You've been listening to Diane on the Greenovation Show with Dominique Doyle from EarthLife Africa and Noel Garson from the African Climate Reality Project. We'll chat to you next time.
Have you ever thought of the power of talk radio and what it can do for your business? Well, brandlive.co.za has been developed with that in mind and brings you an international first. The brandlive.co.za internet radio platform gives businesses a new voice and opportunity to change the conventional communication platform that a newsletter represents. Facilitated by leading industry experts, the brandlive.co.za platform offers a high-quality digital talk radio medium for companies to communicate their new developments, create customer-centric radio content, develop an added value in terms of client relations, and create a better flow in terms of feedback and interactivity to their existing customer base and market. Simultaneously, the platform can also open a brand or business to a new group of potential customers. Technology is constantly shaping the way we communicate and consume information, which presents your business with a simple and affordable way to address your customer or client in a modern, multifaceted setting. Internet radio is now available for your business, a powerful corporate branded tool to complement your existing communication platforms. In today's competitive market, you need to use every tool available to retain and cultivate loyal customers. Online corporate branded radio offers you an exciting range of communication tools uniquely tailored to your brand and addressing your communication challenges. With the brandlive.co.za radio platform, you have the power to brand your business in the way you like. You are able to develop content with your own production team and have the opportunity to interact with your customers in real time on issues such as quality assurance, customer service, and any other operational matters. Brandlive.co.za. Now your brand has a voice.